The Imperial Crown Hotel in Tokyo was more than just a building. It was a palace of light and wealth. Its chandeliers glowed like captured constellations, reflecting off polished marble floors that stretched endlessly. The scent of fresh lilies filled the lobby, carried by the cool hum of the air conditioning. Guests arrived in sleek black cars, their luggage whisked away by eager bellboys in white gloves. For most visitors, this place was a playground of luxury. But for Maya Tanaka, it was a workplace. At 43, Maya had spent nearly 2 decades working at the Imperial Crown as a housekeeper. Her uniform was always spotless, her hair tied neatly in a bun, and her posture carried a quiet grace. She polished glass tables until they shone, adjusted flowers in their vases, and moved silently between the shadows of the elite. To the wealthy guests, she was invisible. Just another maid, someone to pass by without a second glance. That evening, as Maya wiped down a table near the reception, the grand doors of the hotel slid open. A group of American businessmen stormed in, their laughter booming, their footsteps heavy against the marble. They carried themselves like kings entering their court. At their head was Daniel Cross, a man whose reputation preceded him. A billionaire investor, Daniel was feared in boardrooms across the globe. His deals were legendary, but so was his arrogance. His assistant, Ethan Blake, followed closely behind, a younger man with sharp features and a hungry look in his eyes. Ethan had built his career on flattery, nodding at every word Daniel spoke, echoing his cruel jokes, desperate for approval. Daniel's voice rang through the lobby, loud enough to draw stares. "Look at this place, Ethan." Even the cleaning ladies try to act important here. He pointed directly at Maya, who froze for just a heartbeat before lowering her gaze. "She's looking at us like she's expecting a tip," Daniel scoffed. "What do you think her yearly salary is, huh?" "Probably less than the price of the shoes on my feet." Ethan laughed obediently. "You're probably right, sir. Imagine spending your life wiping tables and carrying rags." Pathetic. Their words carried like knives, slicing through the silence of the grand lobby. Guests at the bar turned their heads. A Japanese couple near the elevators whispered to each other, clearly disturbed by the display. Yet no one intervened. Who would dare? Daniel Cross was powerful, untouchable. Daniel stepped closer, towering over Maya. "Hey, do you even understand English? Do you know who I am?" Maya bowed her head, silent. Her hands trembled slightly around the cloth she held, but she said nothing. "See that?" Daniel said with a laugh. "Not even a word. She's probably too stupid to understand. Imagine being so useless you can't even answer a simple question." Ethan leaned toward his boss. "Some people are just born to serve, Daniel. They'll never climb out of the dirt. That's their fate." Daniel smirked. "Exactly. People like us lead. People like her clean up after us." The laughter that followed was cruel, echoing across the marble floor like thunder. Maya's face remained composed. Her silence might have looked like submission to them, but in her eyes, sharp, dark, and observant, there was something else, something they didn't notice, because Maya understood every single word. Daniel turned back to the receptionist, speaking loudly enough for Maya to hear. "This is why I hate traveling abroad. You can't expect quality. Even in a 5-star hotel, you get staff like that. Mute, invisible, useless." The receptionist forced a polite smile, but his discomfort was evident. Still, he said nothing. Daniel Cross was too important a guest to offend. Maya placed the cloth back in her cart and bowed once more before moving away. Her steps were slow, graceful, deliberate. She didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her rush. Behind her, Daniel laughed again. "See? She knows her place. That's how it should be." Ethan nodded eagerly. "Exactly, sir. The world makes sense when people stay in their lanes." They both laughed, satisfied with themselves, unaware of the eyes that followed them, unaware that others in the lobby had witnessed everything. Maya walked toward the far side of the lobby, her mind racing. She had endured many insults in her years of work. She had been ignored, underestimated, even dismissed outright. But there was something about the way Daniel and Ethan had mocked her tonight that lit a fire deep inside her chest. It wasn't just arrogance, it was cruelty. And though she stayed silent, her silence was not weakness. It was restraint, because Maya Tanaka was not the woman they thought she was. Behind her modest uniform and quiet demeanor lay a truth they could not imagine. A truth that, very soon, would turn their arrogance into humiliation. The next morning, the Imperial Crown Hotel gleamed under the soft light of dawn. The staff moved like clockwork, polishing, arranging, preparing for another day of serving the world's elite. Maya Tanaka was already on her feet before the sun fully rose. She pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway, her movements precise and graceful, like a dancer gliding across a stage. Each detail mattered: the angle of the folded sheets, the shine of the mirrors, the scent of the air. She had worked here long enough to know that the wealthy often believed luxury came from marble and gold. But in truth, it came from people like her, from invisible hands making sure the world of the rich never showed a crack. As she smoothed a blanket over a guest bed, the sound of loud voices echoed down the hall. She didn't need to step outside to know who it was. Daniel Cross. His laugh was unmistakable, deep, arrogant, and always at someone else's expense. Moments later, the door to the suite across the hall opened, and Daniel emerged, dressed in an expensive navy suit. Ethan followed him, clutching a tablet, his expression eager, almost desperate. "Ethan," Daniel said, adjusting his cufflinks, "this place really tests my patience. They call it 5-star, but I've seen better service at airports. Did you see that maid yesterday? Pathetic." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "Yes, sir." She looked like she had no idea what was happening, couldn't even respond. It was embarrassing just to watch Maya step quietly into the hallway, holding her cart, as though by coincidence. She bowed politely, her face unreadable. Daniel smirked when he saw her. Speak of the devil. Here she is. Tell me, Ethan, should we ask her to shine our shoes? Maybe it's all she's good for. Ethan laughed, glancing at Maya with disdain. Not sure she'd even know how, sir. Some people are hopeless. Daniel's voice grew louder, deliberately carrying through the hallway. Look at this, Ethan. She doesn't even look us in the eye. That's what happens when people know their worth. Nothing. A few doors down, another guest stepped out. A middle-aged man in a gray suit paused, glancing toward the scene. His brow furrowed slightly, but he said nothing, slipping quietly into the elevator. Daniel turned back to Maya. Do you understand English, maid? He demanded, exaggerating the word maid as though it were an insult. Or are you just going to stand there mute again? Maya bowed again, her silence calm, composed. Daniel scoffed. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Ethan added fuel. Some people live their entire lives cleaning up after others, Daniel. And they think that's enough. Imagine being satisfied with that. Maya pushed her cart past them, her steps measured. She felt their eyes burning into her back, their laughter echoing against the walls. But she didn't flinch. Inside, her thoughts swirled. She had endured humiliation before, but this was different. This was cruelty paraded in public, designed to strip her of dignity. And yet she would not give them the reaction they craved, for now silence was her shield. Later that day, the businessmen gathered in the hotel's grand dining room. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the smell of roasted duck and fresh miso drifted across the tables. The room buzzed with conversations in multiple languages, from German to Mandarin, as powerful men and women dined together. Daniel sat at the center table, surrounded by his entourage. Ethan hovered at his side, laughing too hard at every joke, nodding at every word. Maya entered quietly with the serving staff, carrying a silver tray laden with steaming bowls of rice and fish. She moved gracefully between the tables, her presence unnoticed by most, until she approached Daniel's table. Daniel leaned back in his chair, smirking. Well, look who it is. Our favorite maid. What's on the menu today, huh? Rice? Fish? Do you even know how to pronounce half the dishes here? His companions chuckled. Ethan grinned, eager to join in. Careful, sir, she might drop the tray. These people aren't used to handling anything valuable. Maya placed the bowls carefully on the table, her expression neutral. Daniel leaned closer, his voice dropping just enough to be heard by those nearby. You know, Ethan, sometimes I wonder why places like this even bother hiring locals. They should stick to people who actually understand service. I could probably buy this entire hotel and fire half the staff by tomorrow. Ethan laughed loudly, clapping his boss on the shoulder. Now that would be an improvement. Across the room, a few guests shifted uncomfortably. A woman in a silk dress frowned, whispering something to her husband. A young waiter stiffened but quickly looked away, pretending not to hear. Daniel basked in the attention, mistaking discomfort for admiration. He thrived on dominance, on reminding others of their place. But Maya, standing silently by the table, remained calm. She had seen men like Daniel before, loud, arrogant, blind to their own fragility. Men who mistook wealth for power and cruelty for strength. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was calculation. Because Maya Tanaka wasn't just a maid. She wasn't who they thought she was at all. And very soon, Daniel Cross would learn just how dangerous it could be to underestimate the invisible. The following evening, the Imperial Crown Hotel seemed even more alive than usual. Crystal chandeliers flickered, casting shimmering reflections on the marble floors, and the scent of fresh orchids mingled with the aroma of roasting meats. Guests moved gracefully, dressed in silk and tailored suits, oblivious to the simmering drama that would soon unfold in the corridors. Maya Tanaka pushed her cleaning cart through the hallways, her mind focused but her senses alert. She had spent countless hours observing the hotel's most powerful guests, learning their routines, their preferences, even their secrets. And tonight, one particular guest would provide her with the opportunity she had been waiting for. Daniel Cross and Ethan had returned from their late meeting, still buzzing with arrogance. They entered the suite, laughing loudly and tossing their coats aside. Daniel's phone rang almost immediately. He answered with exaggerated charm, oblivious to the presence of Maya just outside the suite door. Yes, I understand. Of course, everything will be ready by morning, he said, ending the call with a self-satisfied smile. Ethan, did you hear that? I can make or break half of Wall Street before breakfast. Isn't that thrilling? Ethan laughed. Absolutely, sir. You're unstoppable. Maya stood in the hallway, silently observing. Her hand rested lightly on the cart as she adjusted her posture, appearing perfectly calm. But her mind raced. Tonight, she would make her first subtle move. She began her routine in Daniel's suite, cleaning the living area. As she polished the glass surfaces, she caught sight of a photograph on the mantel. Daniel, smiling with a group of powerful investors, his hand resting on the shoulder of a man who looked familiar, someone Maya recognized from an entirely different context. A smirk played at the corners of her lips. She knew exactly what she would do. Later in the grand dining hall, Maya carried a tray with drinks. She passed by Daniel and Ethan's table, her movements fluid, graceful, and deliberate. As she bent slightly to serve them, she allowed a subtle slip of the tray, a controlled misstep that caused a single crystal glass to teeter dangerously before she caught it. Daniel gasped. What are you doing? Careless, completely careless. Ethan leaned in, shaking his head. Seriously, sir, she can't even manage one glass. Maya met their eyes for the briefest moment, and in that moment, a flicker of recognition passed between them. Not for who she was, but for the confidence she radiated. Confidence that didn't belong to a powerless maid. She straightened, moving on with the tray, leaving a subtle impression of control behind her. Later that night, Maya returned to the suite to tidy up after the dinner. She noticed a security panel blinking softly in the corner, a device Daniel had been bragging about earlier, claiming it was impenetrable. A quiet chuckle escaped her lips. She reached for the panel and pressed a hidden sequence of buttons, one she had memorized from a brief glimpse during her previous observation. The screen flickered, then displayed a list of recent transactions and guest logs. Ethan entered the suite at that exact moment, stopping short when he saw her. Wait, what are you doing? He asked, his tone a mixture of panic and disbelief. Maya didn't look at him. She continued scrolling through the panel, her movements calm, precise, authoritative. Just organizing, she said softly, her voice carrying an unexpected weight. Someone might appreciate a little order. Daniel entered next, noticing the screen. His face turned from surprise to alarm in an instant. How did you? Maya turned to him slowly. Her gaze was steady, unyielding. You underestimate me, Mr. Cross. That has always been your mistake for the first time. Daniel hesitated. Ethan's grin faded, replaced by confusion. You, Daniel began, but the words stuck in his throat. Maya's lips curved into a faint smile. You assume power comes from wealth alone, but true influence, true control, comes from knowledge, observation, and patience, things you clearly lack. A few staff members had gathered quietly outside the suite, sensing the unusual tension. Even some guests from the floor above paused, whispering among themselves. Something was happening, something that made the air feel heavier, more electric. Maya walked past Daniel and Ethan, her steps deliberate. She paused at the door, glancing back. I suggest you reconsider your approach to those you deem beneath you, she said, because sometimes the invisible ones are the most dangerous. With that, she left the suite, leaving Daniel and Ethan standing frozen, staring at the security panel and at the calm figure of the maid who had just shattered the illusion of her powerlessness. As she moved down the hallway, Maya's mind replayed the events of the night. This was only the beginning. The first hints of her identity had been revealed, subtle enough to sow doubt, but controlled enough not to trigger panic. The question lingered in the air. Who really was Maya Tanaka? A maid, or something far more formidable? And as she pushed her cart quietly down the hallway, a small, satisfied smile touched her lips. Daniel Cross would learn soon enough that appearances were deceiving, that those who seemed powerless could wield a quiet, terrifying authority. For now the empire of arrogance continued in the suite behind her, unaware that the ground beneath them had already begun to shift. And Maya, she was ready for the storm. The night deepened, and the Imperial Crown Hotel grew quieter, the hum of distant elevators and faint chatter from late-night guests filling the air. Yet in the East Wing, the tension simmered like an unspoken storm. Maya Tanaka moved with deliberate calm, her uniform immaculate, her presence unnoticed by most. But the weight of her observation hung in every corridor she passed. Tonight was the culmination of months of preparation, analysis, and silent surveillance. Everything led to this moment. She approached the suite where Daniel Cross and Ethan had been hosting their private meetings. Her footsteps were soft but resolute, each one echoing faintly against the marble floors. As she neared the door, she paused, taking a steadying breath. It was time. Inside, Daniel paced the suite, muttering to himself about the strange interruptions that had occurred earlier. Ethan slumped on the couch, flipping through papers, still confused by the sudden revelation of Maya's competence. Neither could have predicted what was coming next. Maya opened the door smoothly, her presence commanding attention immediately. Daniel froze, eyes narrowing. How did you get in here again? He demanded. Maya stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind her. I told you, Mr. Cross. You underestimate me, she said, her tone calm but firm. Tonight, you will see why. She moved toward the security panel, typing rapidly. Each keystroke precise, deliberate. The screen lit up with real-time access to private communications, financial transactions, and sensitive information that Daniel had assumed was untouchable. Ethan's eyes widened. That's impossible. No one should. Maya raised a finger, silencing him effortlessly. Impossible is only a matter of perspective. Daniel approached, fury and fear battling across his face. Who are you, really? He demanded. Maya's lips curved into a controlled smile. I am someone who has watched, learned, and waited. I am the one you ignored, the one you considered powerless. And now, I hold the truth of your empire in my hands. Her words hung in the room, heavy and undeniable. Ethan's confident smirk vanished completely. You see, Maya continued, stepping closer to the table, power isn't granted by wealth, influence, or titles. True power is quiet, patient, observant, and above all, it is precise. Daniel tried to regain his composure. You can't possibly. I already have, Maya interrupted. She pressed a final sequence on the panel, and instantly a detailed log of their financial manipulations, private deals, and hidden accounts displayed across the screen. The information was comprehensive, meticulous, and damning. Daniel's face went pale. No, This, this can't be real. Maya's gaze never wavered. Real enough to ruin the empire you've built on arrogance and deception. You've played with fire, Mr. Cross, and tonight, the fire turns on you. Ethan stood abruptly. You can't do this. Who are you working for? Maya's smile widened slightly. I work for no one. I answer to no one. And yet, everyone. You see, the world is bigger than your suite, your wealth, your delusions of control, and I am the consequence of your neglect. The tension in the suite was palpable. Even the staff outside seemed to sense the shift. A few whispered anxiously, wondering what had transformed the quiet maid into the figure of authority standing in the room. Daniel sank into a chair, running a hand over his face. What do you want from us? Maya paused, her eyes piercing both men. What I want is simple. Accountability, transparency, and perhaps a chance to remind you that no one is untouchable. Not even you. She walked past them, tapping a folder she had brought with her. Daniel looked up, noticing it for the first time. What's in that? He asked nervously. Everything, Maya said. She placed it on the table, opening it to reveal documents, recordings, and evidence. Each piece connected directly to Daniel and Ethan's misdeeds, exposing fraud, manipulation, and betrayal. Ethan's hands trembled. You've compiled all of this. Secretly? Maya nodded. Quiet observation, patience, and the discipline to wait. Skills you underestimated because I wore a uniform and carried a cleaning cart. Now the choice is yours. Face the consequences or attempt to bargain with what you've ignored for so long. Daniel's confident posture crumbled entirely. You can't possibly. I already have, Maya said firmly. Her eyes gleamed with a mixture of satisfaction and resolve. Consider this the first lesson in humility. The second will come if you fail to take it seriously. The two men exchanged panicked glances. For the first time, they understood the depth of their miscalculation. The woman they had mocked, overlooked, and underestimated had turned the tables entirely, controlling information, exposure, and leverage. Maya turned, preparing to leave the suite. Her presence alone seemed to shrink the room, her calm authority leaving a lasting impression. Remember this night, she said softly but clearly. Power is never what it seems, and those who ignore the quiet ones often regret it most. As she exited, the suite felt suddenly smaller, the chandeliers dimmer, the air heavier. Daniel and Ethan remained seated, dazed, realizing that their empire had been shaken not by rivals, not by outside forces, but by the quiet observer they had ignored. Maya returned to her hallway, pushing her cart with the same composure as always. But inside, a small, satisfied smile lingered. The storm she had orchestrated had revealed the truth, and the consequences of their arrogance would ripple far beyond the walls of the Imperial Crown Hotel. Tonight, the quiet power had spoken, and it would not be forgotten.